Hey guys, Amelia here. Today I would like to share some tips and strategies with you for weaving in your ends. The first thing is pretty obvious, pretty straightforward, and that is just to make sure that all your ends are at one side of the work, specifically the back, because not much is more frustrating at the end of a knitting or crochet project than thinking you're done with all of your ends and then finding some new ones that you missed. So if I am done and about to weave in my ends, I just make sure that they're all at the back, and any that are still at the front, I'll just reach through with my hook and pull them through. It's pretty simple. The second thing I want to share is definitely pretty common, but it's not something that everyone does, and that is using a tapestry needle to weave in your ends. Maybe this is something that most people already know, but when I was a little bit newer to crocheting, I would just use my hook and pull my ends through the work almost like I was still crocheting. And I did this until I learned about something called a Russian join. Just learning that made me decide to start using a tapestry needle to weave in my ends, which I'll go ahead and start doing with this piece. And instead of just sticking it in the middle of the stitches, I will actually now find a piece of yarn and I will work inside that bit of yarn. So I don't know if you can see this, but I'm actually working inside, not just inside this stitch, but inside this whole ply of the yarn. And I'll just do that a little bit and then pull it through. So working inside the yarn itself and not just in between the stitches and so on would be my second tip. My third tip has to do with having a lot of ends to weave in at one time. You can see over here I still have a fair number of them, and when I have just one or two ends, it's not that big of a deal to weave one in, snip it off with my scissors, weave in another one, trim it off with my scissors. But when you start to have dozens and dozens of ends, that can be really, really repetitive and boring and just starts to seem like it takes a long time. So to solve this, I started combing all of my ends over in one direction, kind of like hair. And then I would start weaving in my ends one at a time, but I don't trim them right away. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. And that may not seem like that big of a deal. It may not seem too groundbreaking, but if you were to just do a couple at a time, then it can get confusing. You can start to pick up an end that you already worked in but didn't trim, and you might end up doing it twice. Sometimes, especially if they're close together. So I'll work in an end and then I'll lay it over to the other side. And this one was giving me trouble. Let's see if I can get it. It's very hardy, fuzzy wool here. Let me see if I can just get it through. There we go. So again, I will just work this into the yarn and then lay it across the opposite side. Then when I am done with however many I want to do, and I get to some kind of stopping point, or I just decide that I want to see the progress I've made, I will then pick up my scissors and trim off all of the ends I've done at once. And not only does that mean that I get a little bit more satisfaction all at once because I open up this nice big space, but it actually saves time because I'm not picking up my scissors as much. All right, my very last tip that I'm going to share with you is what to do when you have an end that is too short for your needle. Because if you start to use your needle, which I would recommend, you will find that if you get something really small, just like in sewing, it can be hard to thread it and then proceed to weave it in. And that is really frustrating. I like to be able to weave in all my ends in the same way. And so what I realized is that if I have an end that's too short, which let me pick one that it's pretty easy to see. I'll pick this pink one. Oh no, cut it too short. But I can still weave it in the way that I want to, because I can take my tapestry needle and I will start to weave right now, work it into the yarn the way that I want, and then I'll just make sure that that eye comes right here next to the end, and then I will thread it after it's already woven through. Okay, and now that it's threaded, boop, I can pull it right through, and this one looks like it doesn't even need to be trimmed. All right, so that is a great problem solver when you have an end that is just too short, or at least it seems at first glance that it's too short. You can still use this technique. So I'm going to finish these ends on this little sampler that I made to demonstrate these techniques, and then I'll show you the final product here in just a few minutes. Okay, so here's my little sampler, all trimmed up and ends woven in. And like I said, I hope that you found these tips useful, and I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. I'll also link the post in the description here where I talk a little bit more about this. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.